So Glasgow is crucial. It's the 26th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. It's the key moment at which we test whether the Paris Agreement that was adopted in 2015, whether that's working, whether that's sticking. And primarily it's a test for whether governments are actually going to stick to their promise of raising ambition, of cutting greenhouse gas emissions from energy and transport and agriculture really rapidly. And it's a test of their humanity and solidarity for all of us as a planet to help those who are vulnerable, especially small and developing countries who contributed least, to whether they can help them. Because it's absolutely clear now that climate impacts are really biting, whether it's wildfires to typhoons, to storms, to hurricanes, to floods, droughts. It's all very biblical and it's really happening now. And the poorest who contributed the least are bearing those impacts already. So Glasgow is a real test for whether we can come together as a globe and acknowledge that this is now something that we have to tackle together. We've got to act with urgency. This is an absolute critical moment because I think the promises that have been made by governments and by corporations as well actually must be delivered. I think there'll be a huge frustration. You can sense it in our young people, in our social systems. So this is a critical moment in that sense, but we can act together now to really end, I think, this era, which is a 400-year cycle of fossil fuels. I think that, data, big data, small data, combining that, geocoded data is transforming our world. It's making it something that is, deeply connected. We all know where we are. We're able to connect with each other. We can download information. A whole load of information is being collected about us that can also be put at the service of keeping people safe, informing them of new opportunities, connecting activists and people interested in the same things together. So whether it's through social media, maps and mapping and who's doing what in real time and who's responding to what kind of information are all critical and, mean that we are ever more reliant and ever more, I think, connected in a positive way through big data. We've got to democratize it and make sure it's available and make sure that, it's not just the data of certain demographics who own phones and who use the internet, but of everyone who is involved, and also make that available publicly, which is why I think the work of national mapping and national geospatial agencies is really crucial, because you're not privatized as such. Much of this data is privatized and is being used essentially to support consumption and business as usual. So we have to make sure that the corollary is that we use our data to support the public interest in a very different way of living. It's absolutely critical that we have trusted, authoritative sources that everyone can rely on and know that they are complete, or when they're incomplete, what the status and gaps are, and that it's truthful. I think there's a great understanding now that with COVID, especially all around the world, that we need, authoritative scientists and public information that everyone can trust. And we're beginning to realize that sometimes the data that we have got, the news that we've got, the maps that we've got are, not always as authoritative as needed. So I think finding and sharing those crucial core sets of data is absolutely critical for us to regain trust in public institutions almost, and in public policy. I think all those nerds, whether you're in the meteorological office, you're, in weather forecasting, whether you're mapping, whether you're involved in geospatial data, your time has come, because I think more and more people realize how crucial that is. They maybe didn't before, actually. Even people like me didn't realize how crucial that is. But it's absolutely clear now that we want to know where is an impact, who is it striking, and the demand for information which is downscaled, truthful, connected and useful for local communities, whether it's, as I said, a hospital, a school, a health agency, is absolutely critical. We need to make sure that we have your data usable and accessible and connected to as many different ways of activating what the changes that we need as possible. So yeah, your time's come to tell everyone in meaningful ways what you do for a living and speak truthfully about it. And I think you're in a much better position than lawyers. Lawyers are usually despised in most cultures as professionals. They are not as trusted as doctors, but I think data and national mapping agencies, people find them you're trusted and seen as harbingers of positive change. You're not seen as leeches on society, sorry, in the way that lawyers are or economists are. So, or as academics are, you're genuinely seen as people who can be trusted and have useful information. You help us find our way. So, your moment's come. We all need to help find our way in one way or another. The good thing is that it is completely possible to tackle it together and create a much better world, because we've now got much cleaner sources of energy. We're able to use renewables. We can phase out gas and oil and coal very rapidly. We can change our agricultural systems to be much more regenerative. So, all of the things that we need to do are technologically possible. What we need is the political will. And that really requires each of us in our jobs, in our daily lives, in our professions, to speak up and to embrace the change that's necessary. I've always, worked mainly in the UN setting as a professional lawyer, and I've also worked in philanthropy. But I've recently started to say, let's add the word activist to your CV. And I would encourage everyone to be an activist in their everyday lives, see their professional roles in and through an activist lens. What does this moment in history require you to do? My takeaway is, everyone wants to know who is impacted and where and what can be done, and they all value and use digital tools and rely on maps and information to find their way forward. So I would say it's really on you to flog your services more. It's really on you to call out those who are ignoring what you can deliver and do. It's time to make your services and your products much more relevant, and actually it's on you to make sure the public and our young people are best served, their interests are best served. So quite often what I've seen and what my frustration has been, whether as a lawyer or as an IPCC scientist, the information in the end that I've brought has been ignored or has been diminished or has been delayed, or people will say we'll act on it next year, and so I think if that happens to you and your agencies, you have an absolute duty to humanity and our future generations to demand action. And that is again what I mean by all of us becoming much more activists. It's not enough to say I did my best, I produced this data. You have to make sure it's acted on. So again, that's the shift that I've made in my professional capacity. It's not enough for me to write a report and sort of throw it over the policy fence and hope someone picks it up. I want to know they pick it up, and if they haven't picked it up, get involved in ways of making sure that those who are powerful and have the responsibility to act are doing that. So we've all got a part to play in making sure that that our future maps look very different. And, we don't see images of wildfires, we don't see denuded hills, we don't see algal blooms, from space. We've got to see different images, and you have a big part in making sure that those different images are seen and acted on, and that the maps that we produce are not maps which show inequality and degradation, but show a different kind of world. And that's what maps have always done. Maps and information have always shown us the world in a different way. So let's do our best to show people the way.